So hey guys, welcome back. This video we're going to be discussing a what if that got more interesting the more I thought about it, and that's about a major turning point that happened within Shinobi history. This obviously being the decision to make Hashirama the first Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village and not Madara. This event would have drastic reverberating effects that I don't think Shinobi at the time even got close to realizing. In the main timeline, Hashirama was chosen as the first Hokage, not just because he was widely regarded as the most powerful shinobi of the age, but he also had widespread acceptance and a more approachable and optimistic demeanor, which made him more likable to the village populace as opposed to Madara Uchiha, who carried a darker, more negative disposition. This time around though, we're going to make things different. Hashirama was originally adamant to have Madara become the first Hokage, and this time he would get his way. Hashirama thought that by having Madara become the first Hokage, it would help ingratiate him with the rest of the village that consisted of many opposing clans from the Warring States period that were now allies. Hashirama knew the alliance was not going to be easy at the start, but expected that throughout time, the allied clans would recognize their similarities more than their differences and band together. Hashirama also wanted this because at the beginning of the new village system, Madara had been left without any immediate family members due to all of them being killed during the Warring States period. He suspected that his lack of familial ties may prohibit Madara from truly attaching to the village. His tactic was to hopefully have Madara look at the village as a new family, to hopefully replace that bond that was lost. Yet even with all these optimistic expectations, we are going to see that reality can oftentimes not be ideal. Before we begin, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. We have chosen our Hokage, Hashirama declared, stepping aside as Madara Uchiha approached the front of the railing for the first time for the entire Hidden Leaf to see their new village leader. The Senju and Uchiha, longtime enemies, had come together to build the village hidden in the leaves. But unlike the original timeline, the title of first Hokage went not to the peaceful Hashirama, but to the powerful, unyielding Madara Uchiha. There was a quiet tension amongst the crowd, as if they could sense the potential danger of such a decision. The quietness soon led to an uneasy applause as the patriarch of the Uchiha looked upon the masses with a stern expression, yet slowly started to nod with approval. With Madara's leadership came an immediate shift. The Uchiha were placed at the core of the village security, overseeing the newly formed police force and given elite roles in governance. The Senju, though respected, played second fiddle. Tobirama bristled. Hashirama remained silent, hoping to bridge the growing gap. Hashirama would maintain the highest authority of any Senju, as maintaining a role in governance helped influence Madara to keep a leveled head and to appeal to his more optimistic side. Tobirama would lose any level of influence in governance and would be regulated to simply a Jonin level shinobi. Under Madara, Konoha flourished, but not with the warmth it once promised. Other nations saw the village not as a beacon of peace, but as a growing threat. Madara launched preemptive strikes against minor rogue factions, stamping out dissent before it could arise. Madara ensured that even the great nations across the land would submit to the might of the Konoha shinobi, otherwise they would be subject to their wrath. The first great ninja war came early, fueled by caution and concern of Madara's power. The hidden sand, cloud, and mist formed a defensive alliance. Hidden Stone would act as main allies to the Hidden Leaf, as Madara would force their hand to submit to the might of the Hidden Leaf. Madara countered with strategic brilliance and overwhelming force. The Konoha shinobi were much too powerful, especially the Uchiha, maybe even more so than they were during the Warring States period, as they were more than a clan but leaders of an entire militia force and village that controlled many other villages. Hashirama would argue as an intermediary between Madara and many of the other villages that refused to submit to the Hidden Leaf. But his words could only go so far. Because of Hashirama, many of the other smaller villages were actually able to lead somewhat peaceful lives, yet controlled lives under the rule of the Hidden Leaf. Hashirama helped to make sure the villages maintained some level of autonomy, as he would convince Madara that not doing so would lead to more rebel factions. The Great War not only started because of the might of Konoha, but because of the monopoly the Hidden Leaf had over the Bijou, as Madara and Hashirama were able to get all nine-tailed beasts. Add to that a growing amount of power that the Hidden Leaf had. The surrounding villages felt uneasy about their power and tried to ally together versus the Leaf to get them to relinquish some of this power and provide them some of the bijou. During the original timeline, Hashirama had tried to broker a peace deal between the hidden villages and pass the bijou to the other villages to make them feel more comfortable, hoping that this would all lead to peace. In this timeline though, Madara would have no such deal. Madara would only use the bijou as a potential gift to other villages if they chose to submit to the might of Konoha and agree to have a ruling government installed within their villages that would lead to making these other villages a province of the Land of Fire. Many of the villages were extremely against this, and this led to the continuation of the First World War. Hashirama would have internal rising resentment towards Madara as he was behaving more and more like an authoritarian dictator. Yet he would try to temper this and work with Madara, believing in his friend he had known for many years. He would constantly be the one to remind Madara of the dream they had to create a village that would be safe for everyone, and use this as an example to convince Madara that other villages should be able to experience the same level of tranquility they hoped for. This would help anchor Madara back to his younger, more free-spirited self and not have him drift further into his growing darkness. Many of the new Uchiha that now had government authority would try to convince Madara to use more of a heavy hand versus the other villages that would rebel against him. They would use the fact that many of these villages were made up of clans that had killed prior Uchiha Shinobi during the Warring States period as motivation for Madara to be more aggressive towards these villages. It was like a constant back and forth influence over Madara. This influence would not go back and forth forever though. Hashirama would mysteriously pass away during the First Shinobi World War, which would lead to Madara becoming colder over time, as he would lose his friend and the last person who kept him grounded in life. The First Shinobi World War would end with villages either surrendering to the Leaf or agreeing to peace treaties. Yet despite all this, none of this would last forever, as the growing influence and the dominance of the Leaf would lead to more uprisings in many more places in the future. Chapter 3, Shadows of Dissent. Tobirama, unable to support the regime, would work to establish Root years after the establishment of the Hidden Leaf Village as a response to the growing totalitarian nature Madara had implemented within the village. Tobirama would establish Root as a secret underground resistance force of shinobi loyal to the Senju. He would certainly think about leading a coup at times, yet his respect for Hashirama and for the sake of the citizens within the Leaf, he would ultimately choose not to do this. Tobirama after a while would leave the village as his disdain for Madara only grew after Hashirama's death. Madara and Tobirama hated each other with a passion and simply could not coexist without Hashirama being able to temper their frustrations. Madara did everything in his power to limit the influence Tobirama had on the village. This almost led to a civil war within the village. Tobirama leaving would make Madara list him as an S-class shinobi in the bingo book, never to be provided refuge or citizenship in the Land of Fire or any of its provinces. His student Hiruzen Sarutobi remained walking the delicate line between service and subversion. Danzo, fed by Tobirama's early disdain for the Uchiha, took over Root at the request of Tobirama to lead this underground resistance against Madara's totalitarian government, and would look to essentially stage a coup had the Uchiha gotten completely out of control. Kakashi grew up bitter as Sakumo was cast out of this new regime for prioritizing morality over the mission. As a shinobi of unmatched skill, he served the system, but without belief in it. He would be much more bitter and jaded than he normally was in the original timeline. Meanwhile, Tsunade rejected the militarized medical system Madara imposed. She would still play a part in the Second Shinobi World War, yet she would hold major contempt at what the village was. Yet she would not be permitted to leave the village like she did during the original timeline. Her skills regarding medical ninjutsu was still highly regarded, and even though the trauma she experienced from the war greatly affected her, the Uchiha leaders would use genjutsu and other tactics to help her manage the trauma to continue helping the village. Both her and Jiraiya would suppress most of their personalities in this ever-growing totalitarian country, as service to the village was seen as the most vital task one could provide. The somewhat free-spirited nature of the Leaf from the original timeline would not be tolerated. Orochimaru, once intrigued by Madara's approach to power, was given freedom to experiment in exchange for loyalty. His twisted ethics were indulged and not restrained, leading to darker experiments beneath Konoha. The Second War would rage on and end as pure devastation ravaged many of the provinces of the Hidden Leaf and many of the surrounding villages as well. Casualties will continue to pile. There was a brief halt within the war. Battles for independence from the Leaf, as well as planned coups, would start up a new war, the Third Shinobi World War, Chapter 4, Rewritten Lives. By the time of the Third War, Madara had completely aged. Many of the shinobi from his era had either been killed or had passed away. Fugaku Uchiha had been primed for many years and had taken over as the second Hokage. The village at this point looked almost nothing like it did during the original timeline. Konoha had advanced tremendously as a village, conquering many natural resources for their gain and constantly reinvesting these resources to promote the well-being of the Leaf and its citizens. The village was closer to a kingdom than an actual village because, in this timeline, the Hidden Leaf had drastically expanded their territory to consume the surrounding lands and villages, such as the Hidden Stone and the Hidden Mist. Those villages were remade officially into provinces of Konoha, and at times would have rebel factions try to stage uprisings versus the Leaf. Yet these attempts would quickly be squashed by the might of the Leaf, and these rebel factions would end up suffering tremendously because of this, as well as the citizens that were resided in these villages. In this altered timeline, Itachi Uchiha never knew betrayal. Groomed as the greatest prodigy since Madara Uchiha himself, he rose through the ranks, eventually leading a specialized Anbu unit focused on the loyalty and suppression of anti-Konoha factions and adversaries. He would go on to become the third Hokage. Sasuke trained in Fugaku and Itachi's personal guard, developing not hatred but pride in his clan and its leadership. Minato would never be trained under the third Hokage's philosophy, and his personality was rather quieter and more stern than how it was in the original timeline. Minato would still go on to become a very powerful shinobi, but he would not reach the heights of greatness that he originally did, as he would be looked over for the Hokage title for other Uchiha such as Fugaku and later Itachi. Naruto Uzumaki was born under surveillance. Without Minato as Hokage, Kushina would maintain the Nine Tails, and the Nine Tails attack was never a thing since Obito would not have gone rogue and gone down the path that he originally did. Naruto would be raised as regular shinobi, and because he didn't have the Nine Tails limiting his upside, this would raise the floor of how powerful he would be as a shinobi, though it would limit his ceiling. And with Minato alive, he would be much more powerful than he was during part 1 of the series. He was raised in a controlled environment as he was monitored, educated, and trained in loyalty. His loud, impulsive personality was refined into something colder and much more calculating. Chapter 5, No Akatsuki, No Peace. With Konoha's dominance, villages like Amagakure were quickly subdued. Yahiko and Konin died in an early skirmish. Nagato was taken by Konoha as an Uzumaki. His lineage was closely allied to that of the Leaf, and he obviously would never get the Rinnegan and would grow up as a good shinobi under the ruling power of the Leaf. The Akatsuki would never be a thing, as the founding members would not have led the lives required for them to even have the thought of starting such a group, as the founding members were either killed or absorbed within Konoha's ever-growing empire and would have not had the perspective to even start the Akatsuki. Chapter 6, Fate of the Konoha 12. Naruto is an emotionless, focused, and powerful shinobi at this time. His desire for recognition is replaced by a programmed sense of duty. His internal conflict revolves around whether loyalty equals righteousness. Sasuke Uchiha, a proud member of the ruling class. Sasuke grows up confident and loyal. Without the trauma of the Uchiha massacre, he never seeks revenge. He and Naruto remain rivals, but as elite enforcers of Madara's legacy. Sakura Haruno. She never even becomes a shinobi under this regime. Her family, with the dominance of the Leaf, never saw it as necessary for her to become a shinobi. The new Leaf raised the barometer of the quality of talents that were permitted into the training academy, and generally only those that were from noble clans or those already showing promise were brought into the academy. Her being neither meant that she was regulated to a standard life as a citizen within the Leaf. Yet whenever she would see the shinobi, she would wonder about a life that could have been. Shikamaru Nara. A brilliant tactician, Shikamaru valued the regime for strategic planning, yet he hides a quiet rebellion in his logic, questioning the system from within. Choji Akamichi. Choji served in the supply and logistics forces, and while he was treated fairly due to his clan's standing, he often questioned the moral cost of the village's control. His kindness contrasts sharply with the world around him. Though he and his clan are fine, he quietly hates the coldness of the Hidden Leaf, always wondering what the village could have been like with more optimism. Ino Yamanaka. Tasked with interrogation using her clan's jutsu, Ino's skills are exploited by the regime. She starts off compliant but develops inner conflict as she becomes privy to the state's darkest secrets. Kiba Inuzuka. Loyal but aggressive, Kiba thrives in the militarized environment. His tracking skills makes him a top enforcer. Akamaru mirrors this behavior as they turn into a capable weapon of the Leaf. Hinata Hyuga. The Hyuga are seen as neutral allies under Madara, respected but tightly monitored. Hinata is more reserved and indoctrinated. Trained in surveillance, Naruto's cold demeanor keeps her away, and she never gets the inspiration to make her evolve as a person. Shino Aburame, valued for his espionage, Shino finds purpose in the system but is internally detached. He follows orders flawlessly, yet his analytical mind senses a flaw in the very foundation of Konoha, wondering if the constant growth of the kingdom would ever be sustained, and if they are actually affecting lives for the better. Rock Lee. Due to his many inadequacies as a shinobi, Rock Lee was actually denied multiple times to be permitted for ninja training. But after multiple attempts and multiple years of training by himself to showcase his skill of taijutsu, he was finally given the chance and the opportunity to prove that he can become a shinobi. And as a taijutsu-only ninja, Lee faced harsh training but thrives through grit and determination. He becomes a poster child for state perseverance, but feels empty in a system that values strength without joy. Neji Hyuga. Never having the curse seal due to Madara refusing any form of hierarchy that is not inherently focused on the leaf and the Uchiha, Neji becomes a proud soldier and an ace of the village, rivaling Naruto and Sasuke as the best in the next generation of shinobi. Tenten. As a weapon specialist, Tenten becomes a core part of Konoha's supply force. She's efficient, but secretly longs for a world where shinobi live for more than war. Chapter 7, Obito, Rin, and the Eye of the Moon. In this alternate reality, Obito Uchiha is never crushed under the boulder during the Third Shinobi World War, because the war happens differently. And Madara's militarized Konoha prevents such chaos from escalating. He is instead scouted early for special Uchiha training. Under Madara's ideology, Obito becomes a loyal enforcer, adopting a rigid worldview where individual emotion is suppressed for the good of the state. Rin Nohara, though a medical ninja, is never used by Kirigakure to host Three Tails, as the foreign influence of other villages is far more restricted. She becomes a respected but controlled medic, growing concern over Konoha's cold efficiency and behavior. As for the Eye of the Moon plan, Madara does not abandon it entirely, but instead of launching it from exile, he works subtly from within the leaf to build the foundation. He views it not as revenge, but as a necessary final evolution to enforce global peace. However, with his ideology already reigning through Konoha, he decides to adjust and delay the plan, seeking instead to maintain the tailed beasts to wield their power over the great nations and use them to fuel a global genjutsu disguised as some kind of international peace initiative. Chapter 8, the Otsutsuki threat. The dominance of Konoha under the Uchiha delays Otsutsuki interference, noting Earth's military unity under a single banner. However, this strength also draws attention. After many years, the leaf ends up growing to establish an empire that rules over all the nations. Without the fractured villages, Konoha becomes the primary target for the Otsutsuki when they arrive. Momoshiki, Ishiki, Kinshiki, and the others prepare a more calculated invasion. The Uchiha, aware of the ancient ninja creed, had been researching relics and ruins tied to the Sage of Six Paths and any information about the doctrine he had started, such as the ninja creed. Madara studied these secrets and passed the information through the Uchiha ruling class, had made sure the current Hokage, Sasuke Uchiha, would see the Otsutsuki as a threat to what their clan had been able to establish. Sasuke prepares Earth for war, forging alliances with other nations through domination, not diplomacy. The coming battle is not between nations, but between species. Naruto, now older, is one of the few non-Uchiha a part of the elite within Konoha. Over time, he studies more about Hashirama and the lost will of fire, and ponders whether the course the leaf has taken all these years really was the best thing for the empire and the world. By the time Madara neared the end of his life, the leaf had become a symbol not of hope but of order. Peace was not earned but enforced. But change was stirring. A new generation raised in Madara's doctrine questioned its values, among them Naruto Uzumaki, beginning to wonder if peace could be something more than absolute totalitarianism, but something more diplomatic, like Hashirama had first intended, where people in villages work together and accept each other's differences and not seek pure domination. One can only wonder. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe.